Hello, my name's Liv, welcome back to my channel Endless Pages. Today's video is going to be me talking about books that I don't talk about enough. So I feel like this list is a combination of some books that would have been on my favourite reads of 2021 video if I hadn't made that video, and then some books that I read before I had this channel and love and just haven't had a chance or an opportunity to kind of talk about them yet. So that's kind of how I have compiled my list for today's video. Let's just jump right into it, and we're starting off with Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is a book I love because it follows that typical dystopian plot. In this world, there is two types of people. We have the silver-blooded people, who are the elite, I suppose you would say, and they treat the red-blooded people like peasants, and they believe they're above them and that they are the better people. And the silver-blooded people also have powers which enables them to keep the red-blooded people in line and push them down. And then obviously the red-blooded people then are the people that are treated like peasants, and they live in lots of poverty-stricken areas. Our main character, Mare, lives in a place called the Stilts, and one day Mare's red-blooded, by the way. She starts working, gets a job at the palace, and by mistake discovers that she has an ability of her own, which red-blooded people aren't meant to have. So the silver-blooded royals that she's working for decide to hide her in plain sight by getting her to be engaged to the prince. And Mare then discovers there is this kind of underground rebellion called the Red Guard, who resist the royals and fight and want equality for the red-blooded people. She starts to help them bring down the royals from the inside. And Mare is pretty much surrounded by betrayal, and she cannot trust anyone. So I love this book, like I said, because I love dystopian books. I feel like you would love the Red Queen series if you were big into Divergent, Hunger Games and that kind of period. That plot of the people that are pushed down and treated like lesser rising up and rebelling. So it's got all of those great little plots in there that I love. It would probably help if I actually talked about the order of books as well. So we have the first book, Red Queen, as I said, and then we have the second book, if I can grab it here, Glass Sword, and then the third book, which is King's Cage. Then we have the final book, Warstorm, and then we have a little novella which is called Cruel Crown, and this novella was so good. It made me sob. It was so good. I know that this series has a lot of people divided. A lot of people didn't like the ending, or a lot of people didn't like the last couple of books, and I totally understand that. I see why people do have their issues with this series, but I don't know, I love it. I feel like as well this series has a lot of interesting, well-written female characters fleshed out. We have some good female characters, like some morally good. We have some morally not so good female characters, which I love as well. If anyone has recommendations for books that have really good, like, female villains. I love a female villain. I love seeing being a female character for once that is vicious and hungry for power and will do anything to keep that power. We love that. So I love that as well. If you're looking for a massive series, this is definitely the series for you. This is a chunky series and it will take you a while to get through these books. So if you're looking to get really immersed in a really cool fantasy world, then this is definitely a book for you. If you like a bit of a love triangle, actually it's not even a love triangle, it's more like a love square, to be honest, then this is definitely a book for you as well. I don't normally like love triangles, but one of the characters in the love triangle was super interesting, and that's what made me, I don't know how to say this without spoiling it, like, he's a really interesting character, so that's why I was okay with the kind of love square, and the kind of relationship that him and Mare had was super unique, super interesting, and made me kind of like having a love triangle in this book. Another thing I love about this book is the bad guys, the morally grey people. I feel like they're written really well, and it makes for super interesting and super intense fights in a way, both physical and like strategy wise as well. So the main bad person, I won't say the gender of this book, is yeah, is horrifying, and at the same time you kind of feel for him, which makes me like, why do I feel for this character? Like, they're a horrible person. So I liked that about this book. Again, if you're a massive fan of that dystopian era with Hunger Games and Divergent and are looking for more of that kind of vibe, I definitely recommend Red Queen as well. If you like this trope of people that are treated like second-class citizens rising up, rebellion groups, really super interesting characters with super interesting abilities, and discussions of morality and power. It's really good. I would highly recommend the Red Queen series. The next book I have to talk about is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So can we just like appreciate this edition? I have like the gold, and then like look at the end pages. Like, absolutely stunning. Anyway, if you haven't already seen in my videos, it's a little bit cut off, but I collect editions of this book because I love it so much. This is a book that I read in my childhood because it is a children's classic. So if you're a person that, like me, doesn't usually like classics or finds the writing hard to get through and hard to understand, then I would recommend this book for you, because it's a classic, but it's a children's classic, so it is super easy to read. This book is about a British girl called Mary who has been living in India for most of her life, and she has lost both of her parents to cholera. So she is sent back to Britain to live with her uncle, who she's never met, in his massive mansion. And Mary is a very spoiled and miserable child, and once she's at this new mansion, she kind of goes exploring and sees what's there and finds this garden that is locked up, and that really sparks her curiosity, and no one will talk to her about it or let her in even. They kind of ignore her questions about it. So this is a book about her discovering the garden, and this is basically a book about friendship. It is the most wholesome, beautiful book about literally the power of friendship, the power of love, and being in the outdoors and finding a passion for something and finding common ground to make friendships with someone. All I can say about this book is that it is so wholesome and beautiful, and a super quick and easy read filled with lovely messages, and yeah, lots of pure imagination and fun. So I would highly recommend this book. The next two books are books that definitely would have been on my best reads of 2021 video if I hadn't made that. The first being The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. Look at the cover, look at it, oh my god, gorgeous. This is a young adult dystopian book. We follow two sisters. So the first sister is C, and about 3 years ago she wakes up on this abandoned island with no memory of how she got there. She lives in this little shack with this android. She only has a single memory, and that is that she has a sister, and she must find her way back to her. Then we follow another perspective, her sister Casey, and Casey lives in this like ecosystem that kind of floats above the earth, and this is because basically it's a reflection of what we are doing to our planet. The planet is almost fully destroyed by humanity, so the ecosystem is where everyone is kind of escaping to, and Casey believes her sister C is dead, and she is unsure whether she should help save humanity with her great knowledge of technology, even though humanity failed her sister. This is a lovely book about two sisters that love each other, and it's also a really confronting read about the reflection of humanity and how we treat the planet and how greedy we are, and how despite what we're doing to the planet, humanity will always be selfish and we will always never learn from our mistakes. And despite the planet literally coming apart in this book, humanity is still selfish and still the same. So it kind of makes you confront the life we kind of live and how we treat our planet, and what the future could look like for humanity if we stay on the same path that we are on environmentally wise. I loved reading from the two perspectives of the sister, C as she tries to get off the island and find her way back, and Casey how she tries to deal with the aftermath of the loss of her sister and her morality with if she should bother to help save humanity and from the dying planet. So this book is stunning. I loved the writing. I thought it was a fantastic story and a really good reflection about humanity and how we treat the environment. Next up is a young adult fantasy / horror, and that is House of Holo by Crystal Sutherland. This is about 17-year-old Iris, and Iris is the middle of 3 sisters, and when they were younger something happened to them that none of them can remember. They kind of vanished and came back a little bit different, and they all had like a scar at the base of their necks. And ever since then, weirdness has kind of always followed Iris and her siblings around. Weird stuff always seems to happen around them. Iris discovers if she is to figure out what happened to her elder sister Grey, she has to confront and figure out what happened to them when they were children. And throughout this search, Iris starts to realize that her sister Grey has been keeping a terrible secret from her all these years. So this book is so haunting and creepy vibes, and just like makes your skin crawl. It's so good. The search to find her sister is so creepy and interesting and keeps you on the edge of your seat, and I just kept reading and reading and reading because I was like obsessed, and I had to know what happened, and I had to know what happened to them when they were kids, and it was just so creepy and beautifully written. We're going to talk about The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I was one of the people that like started reading this and didn't realize it was a historical fiction. Dead set thought Evelyn Hugo was a real person, but I don't feel stupid about that because I know so many other people did the same thing. So Evelyn Hugo is this movie star. She was a massive movie star in like the 70s, a very famous, very glamorous movie star, and she's also famous for having had 7 husbands. And then one day she reaches out to our main character, who is a journalist, and says, I will do a tell-all interview with you. Evelyn is known for being a very secretive person and not talking to the press a lot. The book is then Monique, the journalist, talking to Evelyn and interviewing her, and the story is set out in chronological order, and you make your way through the 7 husbands of Evelyn. This book totally caught me by surprise. I won't tell you why, because you need to read this book to appreciate the writing and the story of Evelyn. Evelyn at first is a character that I thought I didn't like, but it's a great reflection about being a woman in an industry like this and the choices you have to make. And Evelyn was a very strong and, although sometimes morally grey character, you couldn't help but understand why she made the choices that she did. I thought this was beautifully written. I bawled for the last 50 pages of this book. I bawled my eyes out. I think it was stunning. It tells an amazing story. Totally not what I was expecting in this book. And it's officially been greenlit for a movie at Netflix, so even more reason to read this book. Finally, we have the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black. I love this series. So the first book is The Cruel Prince. I should have had these books in order. And then we have The Wicked King, and then we have the final book of the trilogy, The Queen of Nothing. But then, set after The Queen of Nothing, we also have How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories. So this book is about 3 sisters, our main being Jude, and when they are younger, their parents are murdered in front of them by a fae assassin who takes them to live out in fairy. So this book is about Jude and her sisters trying to survive in the world of fae, being human, and it's not easy. They're mocked and bullied, especially by the Prince Carden, who is obsessed with making Jude's life miserable and is really vicious and hates her. So Jude realizes that she must be strong and vicious to be able to survive in this world, and she is determined to make her own place in the world of fae. So this is a really fun enemies to lovers book. Chef's kiss. Mwah, it's so good. The romance in this, oh my god, it's written so well. I absolutely love it. I'm obsessed. I actually, when I first read this book, I wasn't the biggest fan, and then I, for some reason, wanted to give it another chance because I knew people loved it. So I picked it up a couple of years later and like became obsessed, and then read the rest of the series, loved it. So second time through was definitely the better time. Yeah, I just think this is a fun story. If you love fae or anything to do with fae, definitely your kind of book. Drew's character is so cool and so morally ambiguous and ambitious and cutthroat, and I love reading a female character like that, like I said when I was talking about Red Queen. Plus the romance is fun, lots of fun and interesting characters, lots of political discussions as well, and power plays, which keep this book interesting. So one thing was that I kind of was disappointed by the ending and this kind of whole final book. I just feel like it wasn't on the same page as the previous two books, and the tone kind of felt different, and some of the things that the characters didn't really feel like them. It didn't have that same intensity and fun of the previous two books. But it was totally made up for in the short story book, How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories. I feel like this undid all of the badness in The Queen of Nothing, and I was able to look past it and really reignited my obsession with this series. It was a great way to end it. I was so glad she did this book. This has lovely illustrations and stories of Prince Carden, and we also have a few stories about where our characters get up to and what they're doing after the end of Queen of Nothing. Also, look at the end pages in this. Gorgeous. Anyway, I would highly recommend the Cruel Prince series. I think it's fun. I think you should check it out, see if it's for you or not. It is definitely a favourite series of mine, and I maybe should reread it soon. So there we have it. Those are some books that I really would recommend, and books I love that I just haven't talked about much on the channel. And I thought I would share them with you guys just in case you find some books that you love too. Let me know in the comments, what are some books that you don't recommend enough, or if you have a channel, what are some books that you wish you talked about more on the channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope maybe you got some new recommendations out of it. All of my social media links are in the description below, and I'll see you in whatever I post next. Bye!